Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon. This is John Suntress. It's the preamble before the show begins, and I'm always happy to give you some show notes. If you have questions, comments, or requests from me, email john@wordballoon.com. It's the best way to reach me. Not Facebook messages, not Twitter messages. Email john@wordballoon.com. Follow me on Facebook under my name, John Suntress, and the Word Balloon Network. Follow me on Twitter @JohnWordBalloon. I have a YouTube channel that is up and running and has videos, and I would like you to be a part of it as well. Would you mind subscribing? It's free. I should say it's under Word Balloon. So check that out. And as always, thank you for listening to the commercials before the show starts. I know that people get annoyed by commercials, but they do pay the bills and they do make a difference in my bottom line. And the only way I get paid is if you do listen to the spots. So in advance, thank you for listening. There might be one more spot before we get started, and then we'll be underway with the show. But as always, thank you for your attention. Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Interesting episode that I wanted to bring back, and that's this conversation with Andrew Gaska. Now, you may not remember Andrew's name, but Andrew has been writing these incredible illustrated novels that weave in continuity from old television shows and movie properties. In particular, we talk about three great things that he was working on at the time. Space 1999, Buck Rogers, the Gil Gerard, Aaron Gray show, and Planet of the Apes, of course. And I'm a massive fan of his. I became aware of him when he wrote his novel Conspiracy on the Planet of the Apes, which did a great job of telling us what was happening with Taylor and the astronaut crew of the Icarus before they went into space. A lot of backstory there. It also got into Landon, who was the astronaut that in the first movie ends up with the lobotomy. And he sees him in the slave camp, and he's trying to talk to him, and then the guy turns, and you see the big lobotomy scar and everything. He certainly fared better than poor Dodge, who ended up getting stuffed and putting into a museum, and that was scary and creepy enough back then as well. But you get Landon's whole story, his view of Taylor in Conspiracy of the Planet of the Apes, and he did the same thing with Space 1999. A lot of what Earth's reaction was to the moon leaving the orbit, and also some of the real climate change cataclysms that would likely happen if the moon were ever to be destroyed, or in the ridiculous, fanciful way that it leaves our orbit and everything. And he did a good job of, I think, coming up with some pseudoscience that explains what happened to the moon, that it didn't just, because of the nuclear waste in Space 1999 explosion, push the moon away from the Earth and set it into an uncontrollable trajectory like a comet flying through space. That would never happen. I mean, the moon would crush. It would crumble, obviously, if you didn't already know. But great stuff, man. And I think Andrew does a great job. He's written, I think, 3, if not 4, Planet of the Apes books. In fact, one just came out about a year ago, and I can't believe I didn't know about it, because I would have had Andrew back on it. Maybe I will for a future Word Balloon. So the last book was called Death of the Planet of the Apes, and as it's explained in the description, it's revealing secrets stemming from the second film, Beneath the Planet of the Apes. And it kind of says what happened to Taylor when he disappears at the beginning of the movie and doesn't show up again until like about the last 15 minutes of the movie, and they wrap things up. But also, you've got the scientist Milo, who tries to reconstruct the Icarus spacecraft, and also General Ursus's plot to go after the mutants of the Forbidden Zone. All that stuff laid out in Death of the Planet of the Apes. Really interesting stuff. So it's fun to talk about all these subjects and more with Andrew Gaska on today's Word Balloon. It's all brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you greatly, League, as always, for your support via Patreon. If you enjoy Word Balloon and you want to help out the cause, Word Balloon is free. It'll always be free. But if you're so inclined, subscribe to Word Balloon via Patreon. Patreon.com/wordballoon, or you can go to wordballoon.com and click on the Patreon ad right there on the front page. But thank you greatly for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon is also brought to you by Aftershock Comics, who are just getting underway with a great November. Unbelievable stuff. Things like the Dark Red trade paperback, Volume 1, from Tim Seeley and Corin Howell. Also, Dark Arc continues with Cullen Bunn and Wando. Issue 2 will be out this month. There are things like the hardcover for Animosity, Volume 2, Year 2, a great collection, a big oversized collection from Marguerite Bennett and Raphael de la Tour. Interesting stuff there. And, of course, the latest issue of Animosity, number 25. Baby Teeth, Volume 3 coming out from Donny Cates and Gary Brown. There's also Baby Teeth, number 17 should be coming out as well this month. Knights Temporal, number 5 with Cullen Bunn and Fran Galen. And also, the complete series of Rough Riders from Adam Glass and Pat Olive. Really a great series that is a fun spin on not only Teddy Roosevelt, but also in his group Annie Oakley, Harry Houdini. Some amazing stuff as far as turn of the century steampunk action in Rough Riders, and you can get the complete series in a big oversized collection. Really neat stuff. You Are Obsolete, of course, Matthew Klickstein's great series continues with Volume 3. Wando's series, Bad Reception. Some of the great stuff that's coming out from Aftershock in November. But you don't have to take my word for it. Go to their website. You'll find full story descriptions, art preview pages, and the diamond codes on how to order these books through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. Andrew Gaska, reliving some of the joy of some of my favorite 70s television reruns that MeTV and the like are certainly exploiting the hell out of. I know Space 1999 these days are on Amazon Prime. Absolutely worth watching. Any live action, as well as his puppet work that Jerry Anderson did in the 60s and 70s. So worth exploring. Great ideas, great practical special effects that are just fantastic. And they're beautiful to look at. You know, the story pacing may be a little slow on these TV shows, but you really will appreciate the aesthetic that they put together for the look and feel of these shows. Unbelievable stuff. And I'm telling you, if you are a hardcore fan of this stuff, you'll love Andrew's novels. They're excellent. So this is a great conversation we had from about 5 years ago. I want to say 2013 or 14, with Andrew Gaska talking about all these great illustrated novels that he's doing. Beautiful, gets great commissioned, fully painted illustrations of scenes we never saw in the TV shows or in the films in the case of Planet of the Apes. Unbelievable stuff. At shows, Drew sells these as posters, and they're so worth getting. But let's talk about Space 1999, Buck Rogers, and, of course, Planet of the Apes with Andrew Gaska on today's Word Balloon. Drew Gaska, welcome to Word Balloon. I've enjoyed your book, sir, and really appreciate especially what you're doing with these, I don't even know what you would call them, but like extensions of forgotten 70s science fiction or neglected 70s science fiction.
Well, thanks for having me, John. And it's a passion of mine to sort of fill in the blanks on the sci-fi properties that influenced me when I was younger and led to me becoming a writer. I want to create new stuff, but I also want to put my touch on those existing licenses, a lot of which, because of the time they were made, the 70s and the early 80s, there's a lot of holes in the stories that could be filled. And, a lot of people complain that continuity bogs them down. I think continuity is an opportunity for new stories.
That's excellent. And, as evidenced by your body of work in doing this stuff, I want to talk about not only what's already out, but also what's coming in the future as well. I guess we should start with the current product, though. I got Aftershock and Awe, Space 1999. I know the hardcover came out. You've got a new series coming up, correct?
Yes. The second book is Classic Space 1999 to Everything That Was. And basically with that, it's comics that came out in the 70s, some from the United States, some from England. Space 1999 comics that, because of the time they were made, they were not written very well, and it's not the fault of the writers who were involved. It's the fault that they basically did not have enough information about the show to be writing anything that had to do with the show. Videotape didn't exist, in the everyday household at that point. So a lot of people were working on things using outdated information. So a lot of the scripts don't make sense. They really don't feel like Space 1999. And because of some likeness rights issues, we needed to go in and do some alterations to some of the character likenesses.
Wow.
Yeah. So I realized if I got to make changes like that, I might as well make these remastered versions of those stories. So basically, they're the same spirit of what the stories were originally, but they're much more tied to actual Space 1999 continuity. They're much more adult oriented stories. So it's I guess it's almost like a reimagining of the old comics, but they're reimagined to be more in line with the old TV show, if that makes any sense.
No, I understand. Were some of these comics the adaptations for things like Power Records, which were a combination of record and comic story that, was a great way for kids to kind of do first reader things. And I seem to remember that Space 1999 was one of those things licensed by either Peter Pan or Power, one of those companies.
Yeah, some of the art that's in Awe actually is from those pages. Awe is the first part of Aftershock and Awe is Awe, and that's the adaptation of Breakaway, which is the pilot episode of Space 1999, but with new material, and also material that was originally filmed and then cut out to knock the 90-minute running time down to 50 minutes because they decided they were going to make it a single episode instead of a two-parter. So basically, we put all that information back in, but as a basis to start Awe, what I did is take the 20 pages from the Power Records adaptation, 20 pages of art, and the 6 pages from the Charlton adaptation, both of which were done by Gray Morrow, but I also just recently found out that Dick Giordano and Neil Adams had something to do with the art on Awe, and I wish I'd known that before it went to press.
Okay.
Because it just said continuity studio.
Sure.
And I credited continuity, but I had no idea it was those guys at continuity. But regardless, we took that art and we made 30 extra pages of art to flesh out in between of that in the same style as that. So it kind of almost looks like it's a new story, but part of that art is old. So yeah, we've done a really complicated thing here.
No, but it's really cool. And also, as someone who lived in that era and remembers those Power Records and stuff, I do think it's a great opportunity to take that high-quality continuity art and really make a better story with it, because that really was the star of a lot of these productions. And again, as you said, not meaning to, kind of crap on the people that wrote those, because they wrote them for a younger audience, and they did oversimplify. And like you said, they had limited adaptation access to kind of understand, the spirit of the show. And that's the great thing. I mean, Space 1999, a show that only lasted 2 seasons, went through a drastic change from its first season to it. I would say drastic, at least as I remember.
Yes,
and okay. And for people who don't know, and shame on me for waiting so long to explain it, the premise of Space 1999, Moonbase Alpha, a working moonbase and a full crew, and accidentally there's a chain reaction accident that causes, with the nuclear waste that is stored on the moon, a chain reaction that pushes the moon out of its Earth orbit and sends it hurtling through space. Which, by the way, I love in Aftershock and Awe. Well, not only do we see, as you say, the adaptation of what they did in the comics and for Power Records, but you guys really flesh out the story and show the reactions of Earth, both on the Earth as a planet and the various people that were left behind.
Yeah, no. When Space 1999 was conceived as a show and it was pitched to producer Lou Grade, he was very eccentric. He was like, well, I'll greenlight this as long as it doesn't take place on Earth. He didn't want a sci-fi show that took place on Earth. So there's one little news report that tells what happened when the moon blasted out of orbit in the episode, and you don't see anything that happens on Earth. So for me, that I always wanted to know what happened with. Surely losing the moon had to be a big deal. And there's all this science now. There's programs like What If We Had No Moon, and on the History Channel there was the program The Universe that dealt with all the terrible things that would happen if we were to lose the moon, and from the obvious, such as earthquakes and tides changing, to even panicked sea life, because they get their patterns from them from moonlight and whatnot.
Sure.
I tried to work all that science into it, because that's one of the things that people have complained about Space 1999 at the beginning, that science was a little wanky. Wanky? Is that a word? Wank?
Yeah, but you're right, though, and that's part of its charm, of course, is literally you've got the moon hurtling, across solar systems and falling into, contact with planets, and it's the ultimate away mission that you're not going back to the ship, you're going back to, the planetary body that you just left, which is fantastic.
No, that was one of the things I wanted to try to do is tackle not only with the Earth stuff, but like when the explosion triggers, which causes the moon to blast out of orbit, the physics of that would actually just destroy the moon. So there's just no way you can move that much weight out of orbit without crumbling it. So what I tried to work in, they have something in the second season called space warps, which are shortcuts in space similar to wormholes. So basically the explosion triggers a dormant space warp, which basically pops the moon out of orbit without destroying it. So, I tried to do little things to try and make it make more sense and still have the fun of it. And one of the most important things to me about the show was that there always seemed to be some kind of a mysterious unknown force that was behind everything, almost like a god or alien entities that were somehow responsible for what was going on. And I tried to play that up in the series.
Very cool. And, I think that the television series ages in a very interesting way, depending on what your point of view is, seeing 70s science fiction. Because in a lot of ways, it really was a contemporary show in terms of showing science fiction and really has that same feel that I always got looking at sci-fi paperback covers from the period.
Right.
I mean, really just from hair design and, the Christopher Lee episode from that's such a neat, and really anyone who sees that, it depends, I guess, on the viewer, because I can also see a younger audience thinking that it's really cheesy looking. But I think the ideas, despite the wonky science, are really interesting. The story of Space 1999. And as you say, great opportunities to fill in continuity gaps and go forward. I mean, really, we're only talking, like I said, about 2 seasons. So there really is a lot of room to continue to tell this story.
Yeah, one of the things I'm trying to do with the classic series, and I think we've done a pretty decent job of it, is basically use those stories to bridge a gap between season 1 and 2, because there's a lot of changes between the 2 seasons. Characters are missing in the second season, and there's never explained where they went. So I've tried to use that as a almost like a season 1.5. The plan is if sales are good on the second book, and we can sell out on the first book, the plan is that I have a series of 8 other graphic novels planned, which would take it through the equivalent of seasons 3, 4, and 5, and bring it to a logical conclusion based on the whole concept of the mysterious unknown force.
That's excellent. Was there, I don't even know what existed. Jerry Anderson just died recently, the show's producer.
Yes.
And I've watched the Blu-ray of the first season and was really interested in a lot of the bonus material that was included in the Blu-ray. And unlike Star Trek or some of these other shows where there really was this like happy marriage between creator and cast, it's really interesting, the animosity and the outright hatred, it seems, on the part of the Andersons and their star Martin Landau. It certainly seemed that way.
Really? Martin doesn't speak of such, so it's. I guess it depends on rose-colored glasses, because I saw Martin recently, and he was talking fondly of Jerry Anderson, but
terrific.
But
that's great.
I do know that nobody likes Freddie Freeburger. He's the guy who he's responsible for Star Trek season 3, and which canceled the show. He's he was brought in to quote save end quote Space 1999, and he was producer on season 2. So all the changes were because of him, and nobody likes to talk nice about him.
Well, and again, I saw footage, and I assume it was teaser footage for the next season, but from that time period, and Landau's like, hey, we heard the fans, not enough action, too cerebral the first season, so we brought Freddie Freeburger in, to get that kind of action semblance and stuff. And I don't know how true that was or not, or if it really was just internal that, or notes from Lou Grade or whoever saying, pick up the pace, or let's see a little bit more action in that second season.
We could have seen some more action without some of the ridiculousness that happened. One of the things that's going to be showing up in the next issue, which I think comes out April 10th of Classic, we're getting close to the end of the series. It's 11 issues. It's been released on Comixology monthly, and then it's going to be collected and be at San Diego this summer.
Outstanding.
It's I've had Victor do some long range calculations and figuring out that they're going to be entering an area of space filled with strange radiations, and a lot of times things will not be quite as they appear. Over the next few years, they're going to be the equivalent of having hallucinations and other strangeness. So I'm trying to explain some of the weirdness of season 3 as maybe what happened wasn't exactly as you saw it on TV. It was some weirdness going on. So.
That's terrific. And how have the numbers been on Comixology?
Actually, I don't know. I have not received that data yet. I'm excited to find out because I really feel that this is the new model. Archaea had basically decided. Archaea is publishing my Space 1999 books. Yes. They had basically decided that they weren't going to do issues anymore on most of their books. Last year or the year before or something, they made the decision. I think Critical Millennium was one of the last series that had actual print issues. And that came out in late 2010, the final issue, I think. Or was it early 2011? Something like that. But regardless, basically I told Archaea that with my books, I need to have the monthly issue. So if it's just going to be digital, we need to release some digital leading up to it. And they love the idea, and apparently a lot of other publishers are doing the same right now. So, it's not quite the same as having your books in the store every month, but at least there's something for people to buy until to promote the hardcover or graphic novel before it gets out there.
That's excellent, and honestly, Archaea. Really, the product speaks for itself when people see their hardcover presentations. They're always high quality, and the Planet of the Apes book was no exception. And Aftershock and Awe, I think, is a really nice volume, and definitely, I think worth the price. And that's good to know that people can, either wait for the hardcover, but really, if they're hurting for the story and they want to see it, they can see it every month. Yeah, is it going to be traded as 6 issues, 12 issues? How are you going to do it?
Oh, it's 11 issues. The classic series. It's not going to be a hardcover because it comes out to being over 300 pages when it's collected, and we wanted to keep the price point under $30.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so it's a soft cover, but it has the cover is a painting by Gray Morrow that was supposed to be the next issue's cover in the Charlton series of Space 1999 comics, but the series got canceled, and instead it wound up becoming only seeing print as a puzzle.
Wow!
Yeah, it's. If you want, I can send you a picture of it if you want to put it on your website.
That'd be fantastic. No, I'm sure the readers would want, or the listeners would want to see it. And honestly, man, what a great thing. And I'm glad you mentioned the other guys from Continuity, like Dick Giordano and Neil Adams, that were involved too. But Gray Morrow is really one of those guys that truly is, I think, unless you're a hardcore Silver Age person and Bronze Age person, you may not know the name Gray Morrow. So would you mind telling listeners a bit about Gray Morrow?
He's a master. His work is amazing. It's. He brought this realism to comics and this dark moodiness. Basically, he worked on a ton of stuff. He did the Buck Rogers in the 25th Century newspaper strip. He worked on Playboy. He worked for Eerie, for Creepy, for Heavy Metal, for Marvel, for DC. He was all over the place, and he was really known for his likenesses and his black and white work. A lot of the books he worked on were just black and white because of that. Some of this, which of the Space 1999 stuff was primarily. The thing is weird is that all the research I did showed that he worked with continuity and on the Power Records adaptation, but none of that stuff is signed. It just says continuity, and then it says that Gray Morrow was doing it. So we assumed that Gray Morrow was the main artist on that. But it turns out no, it was Neil and Dick, and Gray was assisting. I don't know if he was inking or not. I'm not sure exactly what happened. It's a very strange thing because nobody was taking credit for what they were doing with that.
So did Neil tell you at a convention, or how did you find out about their involvement?
I don't even know if Neil remembers because I've spoken to Neil a few times, and it never came up. Not that we were specifically talking about that, but I'm pretty sure he knew what I was doing when I spoke to him. So it was basically an Uber fan who had interviewed them back in the 80s or something, who got in touch with me and then showed me all this stuff that he had.
Wow.
Yeah, so I wish I could have put their names on the book,
Well, and as a guy who likes to go back and get 70s specialty comics, I know that the occasional Adams cover for $6 Million Man,
right.
things like that. And I know, and again, as I'm sure, like you said, even researching this stuff, I did know the continuity did a lot of this crossover kind of stuff. And again, this was Giordano and Adams at their peak.
Yeah.
Doing this incredible art. That's interesting.
I just figured that if it had been them, their names would have been on it. I figured it was probably low level people at continuity who were doing the work. I had no idea, but it's beautiful work, that's for sure. So
absolutely. And then you got is it Danny Miki? How do you say?
No, his name is just Miki.
Okay.
People confuse him with Danny Miki a lot because Miki. But yeah, he's a Spanish artist. The only other thing he's done over here is one of the paintings in my Planet of the Apes book. But he was able to match Gray Morrow's and Dick's and Neil's style and try to make it look as fluid as possible. The painted sections in the Aftershock part of the book was done by a different artist, who's David Hueso. He's also a Spanish artist.
Both are amazing, man. No, it's really beautiful art in Aftershock and Awe. Have they continued to work then on the classic Space 1999 with you?
Miki's been working on the classics with me because he's really good at aping the styles of the guys who worked on it originally. And part of the problems, in addition to changing the likenesses on some people because of actor issues, the characters were holding the comm locks wrong because the TV screens are on the top. But they were holding them and looking at the photograph of themselves, which was their identification photograph, like that was the TV screen, and the Eagles were drawn with the wrong amount of engines and all this other stuff. So we went in and tried to fix as much as we could. But
wow,
it's basically, that's why I'm calling it remastered instead of reprinted. In no means, this is not a George Lucas thing I'm doing here. We're not trying to supplant the old versions. And if for some reason we do so well that I could afford to get the rights for the actors and everything, I would do a black and white reprint of the original, unchanged, story unchanged as well, in addition to what we're doing. But
cool.
But this is just a new take on it, which actually fits it all into continuity. So,
who owns the rights to? Is it still Jerry Anderson's company that owns the rights to Space 1999?
No, Jerry Anderson's company, as far as I know, never owned it. They created it for ITC.
Okay.
And now ITV is the owner. So I'm not sure how that works, but it's a different company.
Have you ever heard any kind of, reimaginings in the way that Battlestar Galactica and Star Trek have recently, as far as that for Space 1999?
Yeah, allegedly there's a Space 2099 show in pre-production right now.
Really?
Yeah, there was some buzz about it for a while, and then it went quiet. Even if I knew more about it, I really wouldn't be allowed to speak about it. But they're trying to bring it back for TV, as far as I know.
And then, do you have to take this stuff to ITV as far as any vetting or anything like that?
What do you mean?
As far as what I know you've got permission to do this, but are they, in the same way that Lucas Film looks over Dark Horse's comic book stuff? Is anyone, kind of?
Oh yes, they're approving every single thing I do.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. All right.
They're watching me like a hawk.
Are they okay to work with it? Obviously, the relationship is going on, so I would assume that everything's going okay.
Yeah. I mean, we've settled into a groove now. There was a lot of strange things going on over there originally. Changes in their licensing department and whatnot, but things really once they reorganized everything, things turned out really well.
Terrific. That's cool. And then, as you say, there's issues with actors, so you do have to change likenesses and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, that's got to be kind of painstaking. Nope, not enough. Make the nose smaller.
Yeah, it's been exactly that. It's been exactly that, and it's been driving my artists and me crazy. So,
I understand, and that's a hell of a tightrope to have to walk.
Well, basically a lot of people. Some people were angry when they first heard we were going to do it. A lot of the fans have embraced what we're doing, but basically, and it came down to is that either these books have to be changed or they're not going to come out again. So it's the way it is. We can't put them out right now the way they were.
I understand.
We don't have the rights. So if we want to see this beautiful stuff see the light of day again, this was the only way we could do it. And again, like I said, I didn't want to just go in and tweak Martin Landau's nose. I thought, let's make this its own animal. So
I understand. Yeah. No, I think it's a very interesting opportunity, and the characters are really cool. You know, I mean, John Koenig is very different from James Kirk, and you know, I really liked Landau, and that's why. And I guess honestly, the animosity I was talking about earlier, it sounded like was more on you know, Anderson's widow's part, because Jerry was either dead when the Blu-ray came out, or you know, wasn't on camera. But the wife was very happy to kind of Sylvia. Is it Anderson?
Sylvia.
Yeah, she was. I mean, yeah, and just I think, you know, the fact that they were dealing with Landau and Barbara Bain, husband and wife, Juliet Landau's parents for fans of Buffy. You know, so Drusilla's parents from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You know, great actors. They had just come off of Mission Impossible to do Space 1999. Did they pretty much go right from Mission Impossible to that?
Yeah, they got pretty much stolen from that right into Space 1999. So,
and of course, Landau, one of the people that supposedly was considered for Mr. Spock, and he always seemed relieved that he didn't have to play it, because he saw it as kind of a cold, unemotional character, and you know, it just seemed to be against his kind of acting.
Yes.
You know, yeah, I thought he was great, and it was, like I said, when the Blu-rays came out, it was fun to see that first season again, and reappreciate them. And Barry Morse, who was Inspector Gerard on the original Fugitive television series, and a British actor who finally gets to be British again on television, and was the scientist, kind of the Mr. Spock character, if you will, a combination of Spock and McCoy, although Barbara Bain was the physician of the station.
Yeah, I mean, Barry was amazing. I mean, Victor is my favorite character, and I think that probably shows through in Awe with the journals I've written for him. But he's definitely the heart of Moonbase Alpha. A friend of mine liked to describe him as a cuddly Captain Picard. So, you know,
I can see that, sure.
Which is a very strange concept, but...
But that's why he was like that combination of Spock and McCoy almost.
Yeah, but not the abrasiveness of McCoy, but
the heart. Yeah, the real. Yeah, like Jim's. You know, just as Spock, you know, kind of shared his brain, I think McCoy shared Kirk's heart and compassion, and I think that's what Victor did certainly on Moonbase Alpha. Really neat, man. And I, like I said, it's fun to see an adult story with these people. Rather than, you know, what we did get, frankly, in the Charlton comics and in Power Records and stuff. Right. So, yeah, honestly, I think it's a good opportunity, man, and I'm really glad you're moving forward with it, and hope to hell that you get to keep going with it, honestly.
Thank you. I really want to finish it off, because I think it's a story that, I mean, the original producers didn't really know what they were going to do with it. Johnny Byrne, not to be confused with John Byrne.
The story editor, yes, sir.
He had this idea of the mysterious unknown force that was behind everything. But back then, the way TV was done, they didn't really, you know, they didn't arc out things like that. Everything was episodic.
Yes.
So basically, based on notes from interviews with him on the type of things that he felt the show was really about, that's what I've crafted this final story to be about. And it's not going to be just... There's a purpose for everything. You're going to be like, wow, all this makes sense in the end, and that's the whole plan. So,
forgive me, man. All I have is Aftershock and Awe, so now I am going to go to Comixology and power through and read these 11 issues. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
You betcha, man. Well, also, you know, I mentioned at the start, you're going to release, hopefully this year, the second novel for Planet of the Apes?
It's actually coming out next year, because Arcade wants to release it when the new Apes movie comes out. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is coming out May 23rd, 2014, which ironically is my birthday.
Fantastic.
So my new Apes book will be out for my birthday.
Excellent. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, that's the signal. It's time for Ape Talk. I don't know why. Every now and then I'm with comic creators, and even if they are or aren't working on a Planet of the Apes property, sometimes talk will slip into Planet of the Apes continuity. So it's thrilling to officially talk about some Planet of the Apes stuff with you because, man, I'll tell you, Conspiracy was so great. It's Brent's story, or pardon me, Landon's story. Excuse me.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So there's Landon. There's Taylor and
Dodge. Yes.
Dodge. Yes, Dodge. They're the first three astronauts in the original Planet of the Apes. So Dodge and Landon are Heston's co-astronauts. And Landon is the one who, to me, always looked like a cross between Ricardo Montalban and Sean Connery.
I make a Sean Connery reference in the novel, too, that his wife always said he looks like that guy from the Super Spy movies.
That's right. And you know, it's really great because in a lot of ways, much like Aftershock and Awe, we get a lot of backstory before the incident or before the flight. You get a lot of flashbacks. Some of it might be fever dreams of Landon's, but it's really disturbing in a great way. It was very interesting to read the book and knowing, Landon's ultimate fate, and again, I'll keep it. It's a 45-year-old movie, but if you haven't seen the original Planet of the Apes, I'll keep it quiet. That's okay. But that's the thing; you really get a full story of Landon's because outside of once they crash and are captured by the apes, there's a big hole. From when we first see Landon captured to his ultimate fate, and this is a great opportunity to not only tell that story, but what happened leading up to the mission as well.
Yeah, and I mean the funny thing is that Landon is not my favorite character in that book. I think I was writing it more from Milo.
Yes,
because to me. Landon was the perfect way to introduce Milo to the situation. Now, for people who don't know, Milo is an ape who's only seen for maybe 10 minutes in the third Planet of the Apes movie, Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
Played by Sal Mineo.
Yep. He's
from Rebel Without a Cause. If you're an old time Hollywood fan, but go on.
He's basically the MacGuffin that got them back from the future. They say in stuff that we never see on screen. But that happened that he found Taylor's ship, got it fixed somehow, that him, Cornelius, and Zero were in it when the world blew up at the end of the second movie, and I just spoilered.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I'm ridiculous. Of course we should spoil, because if you're a fan of the Planet of the Apes, you know these things, and you really do. It only informs the story you're telling if you've already seen the first 5, films. I'm assuming you're going to keep going and take us all the way to Caesar and battle for the Planet of the Apes in some fashion. Should you continue to tell these novels?
That is the plan. I have a six novel arc planned out for that. If the first two do well, then they'll greenlight the last 4. But yeah, the plan is to fill in the gaps on everything, and to make it all make sense in the end. But
that's outstanding, man. So Milo, as you say, at the beginning of Escape of the Planet of the Apes. He's the guy who kind of fixes the ship. Go on, please.
And then he gets killed by a gorilla, a regular gorilla in a zoo. So it's like I got you guys here. Oops, I'm dead. So he's quickly removed because they realized he was too smart for the plot. So I always wanted to know what happened to him. And to me, if he had encountered Landon could be like, "No, listen, I'm not crazy. I'm from another planet. My ship is in the desert. I'll tell you how to find it." And that the whole setup is to get Milo out there to find the ship, so he can be repairing it in my second book,
which is outstanding. And that's going to be great. And that's the thing, we really do learn. It makes sense, that the apes are a bit smarter than what we see on screen. But if you look very closely, the way their clothes are made, things like that, they had to have some level of technology. So it's a great leap from going, working with leather to being able to fly a spaceship. Don't get me wrong, but I do think that what I like is that you've taken it closer even to what I guess Pierre Boulet originally wrote about in the novels, because they had a much more advanced technological society in the novel as opposed to the film.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the novel's a completely different animal. They had little whirlybird helicopters and like a Broadway and all this other stuff. it would be interesting to see an Apes at a film adaptation that was of that. It would be completely different. And
Absolutely. Have you seen or do you remember watching that Saturday morning cartoon?
oh, I love that Saturday morning cartoon. And
Yeah, please, because everyone thinks that when I rave about these things on my show, everyone's like, yeah, whatever. So please, tell people really. I mean, it's dry, but I think the ideas that are there are really interesting. And I have to say, for a Saturday morning show, it had a lot of interesting ideas.
It's much better than the actual TV series from Planet of the Apes, because the TV series was just like Starsky and Hutch, pretty much. They pull a Bruce Banner. They wind up in a new town. They fix the problem and have to leave to the next town because they're about to get caught by the authorities.
That's true.
That's all that's all that is. But the cartoon actually had an ongoing story with the plot getting worse and worse, and for the characters. And then towards the end, they build a human colony, and you think that humankind's going to fight back, and then it got canceled.
Yeah, was it Depathy that I forget the name of the production company that made it. You can find episodes on YouTube, and I love it. They had Ape Television, yeah. which I love. So there's like a Walter Cronkite kind of ape and stuff. And it kills me. And I mean, you saw their version, a much more Supreme Court almost looking kind of tribunal or court than what we got again in the film. And again, taking up I love all 5 movies. I think the original 5 movies are really interesting, and even the warts that are on the 5th movie, I don't care. Hey, any movie that can put rifles in the hands of Roddy McDowall and Paul Williams, you got my vote. That's okay. That's fine. It cracks me up. I think it's just ridiculously charming. Lou Ayres. I mean, John Huston, Lou Ayres, all of these great actors. James Gregory in Beneath the Planet of the Apes. The only good human is a dead human. You got to love that stuff. It's really, really great. And, of course, Maurice Evans, Dr. Zayas. I mean, I know that you guys are at competing companies. Do you ever look at what Boom is doing with the Dr. Zayas continuity?
Yeah. I had wanted to actually try to connect our continuities, but that just didn't seem like that was going to work out. Too much intercompany politics, I guess.
I understand.
Yeah.
No, I understand. And Gabe and Karina great Gabe Hardman and Karina Betchko, they're friends of the show, and I love with what they're doing with that 15 years before Taylor continuity that they're playing with. But honestly, man, no. I really enjoyed the first book. The second book, and you told me this in San Diego a year when Conspiracy came out. The second book's title is?
Well, it's still tentative. It hasn't been approved yet, but it's Death of the Planet of the Apes.
Do you want to say anything about the plot of the second book, or do you want to kind of keep that quiet?
No, I can let. I think people would like to hear this. So basically, because Chuck Heston didn't want to be in the second Apes movie, he's in the beginning and again at the end. He's missing for 3/4 of the movie.
He falls through a kind of mirage of a mountain the face of a mountainside, and he kind of strikes it with the butt of his gun, and he disappears.
Yes. So the main thrust of this novel is Taylor's last story on the Planet of the Apes. It tells what happened to him that eventually leads to Brent finding him in that jail cell. So
fantastic.
Yeah. And, in addition to that, it's going to have how Milo, Cornelius, and Zira basically wind up getting that ship out and launching it. It's going to have stuff with Mungwort, the half gorilla, half chimpanzee character that I had in my last novel. In the end, he's thrown into a pit with some strange half ape, half human-like creatures. It's gonna continue his story. It's going to continue Dr. Galen's wife, ex-wife now because he's dead. His widow, Liette, her story. It's going to probably be about 100 pages longer than the last book.
Wow, impressive. And yeah, that's, along with the human story and Milo's story, you really do understand a lot more about the caste society of the Planet of the Apes and why the gorillas kind of hate the chimpanzees and the, orangutans. You really do kind of understand the race relations, for a lack of a better word, between the various apes. And I think that's terrific. And the characterizations really come through.
Yeah, well, the characterizations is very important to me. It's like especially the characters that were actually in the films. I would watch Planet of the Apes with my eyes closed to just hear the way these people talk, so to try to make sure I wrote them sounding the way they actually talk. I've been told in a lot of cases that paid off. I know in 1999, a lot of fans have thought that Victor's dialogue, extra dialogue in journals, very much feel like it's Barrymore stalking because of the way I've written them. So it's very important to me. It's nothing worse than picking up a Star Trek novel and Data doesn't talk like Data.
I understand. I understand. Hey, and honestly, I'll pay you a compliment. I think Peter David is one of the better adapters of licensed material and making new things out of them. And I honestly believe that the Space 1999 book and the Apes book, like you said, no, you hear these characters. Absolutely. You hear their voices. And I think they ring very true.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, man. And no, it's really, really cool. Brent also appears in Conspiracy of the Planet of the Apes, of course.
Yes.
Almost in that same way that a junior or a backup crew, that you'd see in any of the Apollo-based films lately and stuff. Mm-hmm. You can appreciate that these guys are all, astronauts and they're all part of the same space program. It's very interesting. And I would imagine Brent, we mainly get Brent's story on Beneath. So are there any hidden scenes that you felt you needed to fill the gaps in as far as what we saw of Brent's story?
Yeah, I've done some research and I found a bunch of scenes that were in the script for Beneath that didn't make it. They're going to be in this. Basically, one of the things I think is really an awesome idea about Brent, which doesn't really come across so much, mostly in the movie, in the original novelization of Beneath Planet of the Apes, it's suggested that Brent is doing so well handling this because he's actually going insane. So it's actually like a front.
Wow.
So I kind of want to go into his head and see what that's like. But so, yeah, it's going to be a much bigger book. I really wanted the first book to be bigger than it was, but basically when Fox decided to push the release date of Rise up, Archaea was like, we need to have the book out when Rise is out. And we had to rush the first book into production, which is why there's some editorial typos in there that I'm not so happy about. But we've had plenty of time to work on this one, and it's looking like it's going to be at least 100 pages longer than the first one. So,
wow, man, that's excellent. And in Space 1999, you've got your dedicated artists, and but I want to quickly talk about in the Apes. You've got these marvelous 1-page or 2-page. Are there any foldouts? Am I misremembering in terms of? Were there anything that was longer than 2 pages as far as some of the beautiful painted scenes that you've got in there?
No. Well, there's one that goes on for 4 pages, but it unfortunately didn't fold out. It's the Forbidden Zone. It switches from day to night to day again. It's a 4-page flip through the book. But no, the biggest really is like a 2-page spread because we didn't have any pullouts. But
okay. But yeah, rattle off some of these great artists. I mean, Jim Steranko did the cover. I know Matt Bush, a really fine Star Wars artist, did some amazing stuff for you. So after those 2 names, rattle off some more names for me.
We have Jim Steranko did the cover, which is fantastic.
You bet.
Andrew Probert, who designed the Enterprise for the original Star Trek movies. He designed the Cylons in the original Battlestar, the Back to the Future DeLorean. He designed the rest of the ship for us, because we only see the nose of it sticking out of the water in the movie. So he basically did the 2-page spread painting of the ship hitting itself. Wow. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
And we basically did the blueprints that are in the on the end pages based on his design. So I don't know. Did we say Dave Dorman already? Mark Texiera, Ken Kelly, Baron Story, San Julian. Scott Hampton, lots of amazing artists.
Yeah, fantastic, man. No, it really is. It's a feast for the eyes because unlike Aftershock and Off for the listeners, Conspiracy of the Planet of the Apes, and I'm assuming the next one as well, these are novels with illustrations.
Yeah, they're illustrated novels. They're not graphic novels. So
right.
If anybody remembers the book that Dark Horse did in the 90s called Aliens, Tribes, basically that was the model for this.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. It's a funny story. It's Mr. Comics had the comic license for Planet of the Apes when I went to try to get the license for comics back in 2006 or 7.
I remember that series. Yeah. Go on.
And Fox wasn't happy with the fact that they had not put out the trade paperback they said they were going to. They had just put out the issues. So when I went to pitch doing a comic series, they had a bad taste in their mouth about comics, and they were like, we don't want to do comics. So very quickly in the pitch, I switched it to illustrated novels, and it turned out that like Aliens Tribes was the licensing woman's favorite project they had ever done. So they greenlighted it immediately, and that's how I got the license.
That's fantastic, man.
By the time Boom came on the scene, they clearly had calmed down about being upset about comics. But yeah, no, so that's how we got this illustrated novel license, which it's a weird animal because one of the negative feedbacks we have on Amazon says, this is not a graphic novel. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of says it's not a graphic novel.
But again, you have all these great comic artists doing these amazing money shots, for lack of a better description, because they really are. And that's the thing. So really, first of all, the novel is great, and it will, I promise you, if you're an Apes fan, it will hold your attention, and you will be thrilled at the continuity fills that Drew is doing in these, because again, they ring true with the characters, and all they do is just expand the story even more. And then you get these incredible illustrations, beautifully painted, that are eye-knocking, and you will be amazed at how cool they are, and they satisfy it in the same way that a great double-page spread would. So I think you get the best of both. I mean, again, they're illustrations. It's not a graphic novel, but it's a very good novel, a great novel, and it has amazing illustrations in it. Yeah. It's worth it.
I think when the second book comes out, we have to do a bigger push to make people understand exactly what it is.
Are you getting the same guys for the second novel, or
there might be some. There's going to be some repeats. Like I'm sure Dave Dorman's going to be back. My usual Blam artists, Dan DeSalt and Chandra Free. And Miki, they'll probably be back. In fact, I know they'll be back. Basically, but we want to get some new blood in there. I want to see stuff from people who were inspired by art by Apes, and are like these amazing artists in the field and are already known for their stuff, but basically have never had the chance to do Planet of the Apes before. That's kind of one of the things I was trying to go for when I got the art from the first book. So we want to do that again. Talking about possibly Bill Sienkiewicz. He was supposed to be on the first book, but scheduling didn't work out, so he's promised that he'll be in the second. So let's fingers crossed, everyone. I've now put Bill on the spot. So if you see Bill at a convention, mention it to him.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Let him know, because I'd like to see some Bill Sienkiewicz Planet of the Apes art. Absolutely. Are there people? Have you reached out to any? And I don't even know who originally did the Marvel stuff from the 70s. Those black and white magazines, man. Had some very crazy, fun ideas of Doug Munch's as far as other areas that we ended up seeing, little short stories. But even their movie adaptations, I think, expanded the films in great ways. I remember you see Zira's expression from the spaceship as they leave the planet and watch it explode. Things like that. Are there any, living artists of that era that you were able to maybe tap for anything?
See, it's like I really would like to, but at the same time, I'm sitting there thinking, we know what those guys have done with Apes.
Fair enough.
Want to see what somebody else hasn't done yet. It's tough because you really want to reach out to those people because they've already done something for it, but you want to get new things from other people too. So I
understand.
The thing is, with the second book, nothing is completely in stone yet. In regards to who the art teams are. So if I have the opportunity that really makes sense, then I will definitely grab someone from back then. But it's up in the air right now.
Okay, fair enough. Another great thing you had in San Diego for Conspiracy were trading cards. And I made sure that I was able to get a handful of those. Are you going to do that again for Space 1999 for San Diego?
We couldn't do it for Space 1999. They're very at ITV. They're very much wanting to keep every licensed thing from stepping on the toes of another one.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So my Apes license is a little broader, wherein I can give away things like that for free, but I couldn't sell them, and that's why we're doing the trading cards. So for the second Apes book, there will be another set of trading cards.
Excellent.
There also will be Taylor's dog tags. I don't know if you.
I didn't get them.
We had Landon's dog tags at the first San Diego, and we're going to have Taylor's at this one.
Outstanding. Oh, that's fantastic. Hilarious, man. I got to ask you about another painting at the back of Aftershock and Awe, Space 1999.
Yes.
There's a beautiful painting of a couple guys standing on the what looks like the pyramids, and you get a beautiful sci-fi shot, and your name is on there along with David Hueso. Did you co-paint this?
I did not co-paint this, but I basically did the layout for the whole thing.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
He put my name there because he felt like it was my concept so much, and I appreciated that. But I do a lot of layout work with my artists. I graduated from the School of Visual Arts. I used to teach there. I actually am an administrator on the weekends there.
Wow, cool.
So basically, I'm always doing layouts and concept designs with my artists. And with that particular piece, he felt like it was so much of the vision came from me. He wanted to put my name on it. So, I'm not going to say no.
That's fantastic. So at the School of the Visual Arts, is this the same infamous, in a good way, School of Visual Arts that Matthew Kelly is at? And
yes.
So many wonderful comic professionals have, taught there and certainly graduated from there?
Yes. When I was a student there, Denny O'Neill was my writing teacher. Walt Simonson was my graphic design teacher, and my graphic novel teacher, and my layout teacher was Carmine Infantino. So amazing people to learn from. That's it.
Unbelievable, man! That is a murderer's row. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's excellent. So, and who are the pros that are currently at the School of Visual Arts? I know Matthew Kelly is there. Who else is currently teaching there that you rub shoulders with?
I think Walt is back. I'm not teaching right now. I'm actually adminning in the graphic design computer labs. But I think Walt is back. I think at least he was back last semester for a little bit. I'm not sure who's there right now. It's a good.
Okay.
That's something you could ask me again in our next interview.
Okay. I will. That's fine. That's terrific, especially getting Denny as a story as a story professor, because I love his text on the DC Guide for Writing, and I really thought that Denny very effortlessly was, and maybe he attributed it to Paul Levitz, but the idea of writing and having, your A plot, your main plot, and then you've got a B subplot, but there's also even strands of a C plot.
Yeah,
and as the story progresses, that is Paul Levitz. Yeah, and as the A plot, finishes, you've already kind of laid out the B plot, and everything like a volleyball team kind of rotates to the next position.
That book that he wrote, the writing for DC Comics, was basically from his notes of teaching the class that I was in.
I kind of figured. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I was really lucky. I took that class 3 semesters. You're only supposed to take it 1 semester. I took it 3 semesters because I just thought I was realizing that I was more of a writer than an artist. I have a mild form of Parkinson's, so my drawing ability has diminished over the years. I can still do layouts and designs and stuff like that, but there's no way I could be doing pages.
Okay.
And I was going more into the writing at that point. And basically, my parents were funding my college education, and they ran out of money. So I was dropping out of college. 5 years later, I wound up going back on my own. But when I was dropping out, Denny was like, "You're too talented. I want to privately tutor you. So come meet.
Wow.
Yeah, come meet me for lunch every 2 weeks." He took me out for lunch on DC's credit card. It was great. A funny story. I almost became assistant editor on Justice League at DC in the 90s. They had done a bunch of interviews, and they didn't really like anybody. And then I came in, and I was recommended by Denny. Brian Augustin was the editor. He pretty much said that Denny just came in like Batman, put my resume on the top of the pile, and twirled his cape and left. So they knew they had to interview me. I went on the interview, and they "Oh, you're great. You're the best guy we've had." They showed me where my office was going to be. Like, this was a done deal. Then, and this is back in the 90s now, they just said, "So, what computer platform do you work on?" And I was like, "Well, actually, I kind of don't know anything about computers." Right? And they're like, "Oh." So they took this other guy instead.
Harsh, man.
In the end, it probably worked out better for me and probably for them. But, what did I do? I went out and bought a computer. I work in a computer lab. Everything is Photoshop. My studios are digital, are virtual. We work with artists in Spain on Skype. So I kind of conquered that my fear of computers from the early '90s. But yeah, so Denny's great. I owe a lot to Denny. His book is still in print, right? That Writing for Comics?
I think so, and if not, again, I think you can search around eBay and Amazon. I would think that DC would keep it in print.
Yeah, because it's a great book, definitely.
You bet. Well, and they've got a full library, not only of Denny's writing, but they've got pencils, they've got inks. I think Klaus did the inking book.
Yeah, Klaus used to teach at the school, too, at School of Visual Arts. I don't know.
Klaus Janson, yeah.
I don't know if he's still there.
That's excellent. Did you ever have special, seminars with, other people that weren't faculty but were big-name people while you were in class?
Yeah, Howard Chaykin came in a few times. John Byrne, not to be confused with Johnny Byrne.
Sir,
also,
Johnny Byrne, by the way, and I meant to say this earlier, not only Space 1999, but a lot of Doctor Who as well, classic Doctor Who.
Yeah, definitely. In Denny's class, John Ostrander.
Fantastic. I love John. He's a good man. We just had him on the show a couple weeks ago.
He actually took over Denny's class when Denny first left, I think.
Very cool.
Teaching there for a while, too. A lot of professionals. Joe Orlando was actually my portfolio teacher.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, would you talk? Because honestly, Marty Pasco's been the only guy that I've had on to really speak at length at all about Joe Orlando. And what for people who don't know, worked at EC before DC, and just a marvelous guy, and was the editor of the Sword and Sandal and mystery books of the 70s, all that great stuff that came out during the expansion of DC when they went beyond superheroes. But you tell me your experiences with Joe Orlando.
Oh, he was so crotchety. It was amazing.
Was he really?
Yeah, no. First week of class, okay, it's a portfolio class. We all come in, we sit down. He tells us to put samples of the best samples of our work. Actually, no, wait, I remember what it was. He gives us a homework assignment, okay? He tells us to draw this, and then he says, get out of here. Okay, the class is 3 hours long. We've been there 5 minutes. So we all leave. We come back the next week, and he says, put your homework up on the wall. Everybody puts their homework up on the wall, and he goes through it and tears it all apart, not telling us what crap it is. Tells all of us we'll never have work in this industry. Get the hell out. So we all leave.
My God, that's awesome. Oh, my God, that's horrible for a student, but very funny to hear. Go on.
We come back the next week, and he says he's decided we're all so bad he's not going to bother to teach us. So we can use this time to do whatever we want. If we want to do our homework, whatever. He's not going to bother with us. So we sit there for 3 hours doing other things, all confused. I'm like, now at this point, I had him when my parents had run out of money. I didn't go to school for 5 years. I worked as a pharmacy technician of all things.
Okay.
I finally said, to hell with this. I need to go back to SVA. I went back, and then, I'm there on my own bill now, and Joe Orlando is my portfolio teacher. And I'm like, I'm paying like $3,000 for this class. I said, this is ridiculous. So I went up to him, and he had told us how crappy all the stuff was, but he didn't really tell us what was wrong or how to fix it. So I went up to him on the third week, and I sat down at his desk, and I said, I know it's crap, but tell me why it's crap so I can fix it. And he said, thank you.
Attaboy.
He said,
outstanding.
He said to everybody in the classroom, I've been waiting for one of you to do this for 3 weeks.
Fantastic.
So yeah, basically he wound up. I wound up meeting with him privately every class and going over my portfolio, and he was a really great guy. He had some very strange ways of doing things, but he was a great guy.
Though, it reminds me of the idiosyncrasies of guys like Steranko.
Yep.
And Infantino, and I know that in the case of Alex Toth, it's partially because he had a bipolar disorder as well. There's that infamous letter that he sent Steve Rude tearing apart a page of Johnny Quest. I don't know if you've ever heard that story with Alex Toth.
Great.
It's, look for it online, and I'll say the same to listeners, because if you saw the page, you'd see nothing wrong with it as a layman. Maybe art students would find a little bit more, but Toth was this in a letter, just ripping to shreds every panel and what was wrong and why it was wrong. And it really hurt Steve's feelings, but also there was lessons in there that were being taught in a very harsh way. But if you read underneath, and I know a friend of mine has gotten to know Jim Steranko really well, and Jim kind of tore apart one of his images. And at first the kid was kind of bummed, and I was talking to him, and I'm like, my man, I'm like, he loves you. I go, he's just giving you tough love. I go, but I'm like, look at the amount of little notes he gave you. I said, he gives a damn, and he wants you to get better. I know it's coming off harsh. I said, but you got to read between the lines. Trust me, the guy likes you. And that's excellent. I'm really glad that you were able to get through and get some amazing knowledge because, like I said, his reputation speaks for itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned Jim because I'm friends with Jim too, and I got a Jim story for you.
That'd be great.
Basically, he, I worked freelance for Rockstar Games on games like Grand Theft Auto and whatnot. I can't say exactly what I do for them. But,
okay, all right. I was going to ask, but all right.
That's basically how I make my money to support the Blam Venture. So yeah, I was at a convention promoting one of my books. I was actually doing, this was back in 2005, I guess. I was doing a sci-fi property based on something Richard Hatch had created from Battlestar Galactica, Richard Hatch.
Sure.
The Great War of Magellan. In the end, it didn't go anywhere. But,
oh man, I saw those trailers.
Yeah, the trailers.
I went to Hatch's site and everything because I was really before Ron Moore. I was really for his revival of Galactica, and Magellan looked interesting. Yeah. But go on, please.
Yeah, we basically put out the only product that came out for it, which was a magazine detailing details on the on the universe. But sort of like an encyclopedia of the universe with some awesome art and stuff. But basically, we were promoting that book, and I was sharing table space with David Spurlock from Vanguard Production.
Certainly. Yeah, who's been Jim's primary publisher for the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, I also do, I do a lot of things. I basically do cleanup work on the restoring the original art that basically goes into a lot of Vanguard's books from that time period.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah, so basically we decided to share table space, and Jim noticed I kept disappearing for a few hours and then coming back, and he wanted to know what that was about. And I said, well, basically, my job with Rockstar is I can go wherever I want, I can do whatever I want, but the minute they call me and say, jump, I have to go back to the hotel room, work on my laptop, and jump, to get them the stuff on time. And he's like, so you're doing this, you're doing all this work at this convention, you're putting out your own book, and you are also doing your freelance work at the same time. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, we're going to have a drink later. So he wants to know more about what I'm doing, and I tell him all about it. And he says, Drew, let me tell you, one day, it's going to happen probably in the middle of the night, you're suddenly going to need me for something. I don't know what it is, you don't know what it is yet, but it's going to happen. And you're going to call me, even if it's in the middle of the night. You're just going to call me and say, Jim, I need this. And I'm going to say, Drew, I'm going to do it for you. So I was like, wow, that's amazing. Thank you.
No kidding.
So that's how I got the Apes cover.
Outstanding, man. Fantastic. That's great.
I waited till 1 in the morning, called him up, and said, Jim, I need you. So yeah, and then he's like, well, what do you want on this cover? So I sent him, I'm a big fan of Japanese movie poster design from the 70s where they had like 15 billion things on the poster at the time. And so I sent him a bunch of that stuff, and I sent him descriptions of everything. And then he sends me back, actually he calls me and he goes, yeah, I'm not going to do that because that's a lot of work. I'm like, oh, okay, Jim, okay, whatever you want to do is fine with me. So he sends me this sketch, which is pretty much what you see now on the finished cover, which has all these things on it, which I had asked for. And he says in the email, I think this became more what you wanted and less what I wanted to do.
No, it's a cool cover, man. And then certainly when the guys from Archaea told me about the book, and one of the immediate things was there's a cover by Jim Steranko, I'm like, well, that certainly has my attention. And then, like I said, man, I think I went to your booth in San Diego and got to just take a quick look and was blown away, like I said, by the art. And saw the trading cards as well. And then, again, I read the story, started reading it in the hotel in San Diego and stuff, and was just like, oh, this is going to be great.
Yeah,
so Oh, my pleasure, man. No, I'm really truly thrilled with what you're currently doing. And then I want to give you a quick moment because I saw at the end of Aftershock and Awe, Space 1999, the mention that another 70s franchise that you might be working on.
Yes, we just got the rights to do illustrated novels for Buck Rogers in the 25th century.
And that's wonderful. You got Gil and Aaron still around, Gil Gerard and Aaron Gregg.
Yes, and we have their likeness rights. So,
fantastic!
Yes. The goal is to right now. It's 2 novels. They're basically we're designing them while we're taking the designs and the look and the continuity and story from the original. From the 1970s TV show. The art is going to be designed to look like pulp art from the 20s. We wanted to evoke the feeling of the original pulps, but at the same design aesthetic of the 1970s show. And it's basically going to pick up in the continuity. It's going to be the equivalent of season 3. Something that happens in the beginning, which is going to cause the Searcher to come home, and you're going to understand why the Searcher happened in the first place, why Buck went out there when he really should have just stayed on Earth. All this is explained, and you're going to find out that there's a threat that interweaves and caused all this to happen that ties back to a villain from the first season of the show. So,
outstanding. Well, much like the original Battlestar Galactica, there were some really interesting ideas on those Glenn Larson shows, but also a lot of cheese.
Yes.
And it's, so this is a good chance. I'm sure you're aware, there are edits of movies like Batman and Robin, and they refer to them as de-assified. And they do that too with, I think, Phantom Menace, and when they cut out all of the, a lot of Jar Jar Binks and stuff.
Right.
So yeah, there's a real good opportunity to de-assify Buck Rogers and get to the heart of what was there, I think, in the pilot, certainly. I even remember seeing the pilot in the movie theater.
Yeah, the movie version is a little different. I actually don't like Buck in the movie version because they edited a lot of his nice personality traits and made him sort of more of a jerk in the film version.
Funny.
Yeah, if you watch I think the you might have to rent the movie version, but the pilot in the 2-part episode version is on Netflix. To just watch on the digital Netflix right now.
Sure.
And he's got a lot of heart in that, and that's the main thing that I think was really endearing about him in the first season. Is this is a guy, some woman's willing to sleep with him to get off the planet. He doesn't sleep with her. He instead saves her from the trouble she's in, and then seems to be dating her for a while later on. They make a mention of that. He's like a nice guy. He's not just
sure
sex. He's very sexist towards Wilma in the film version, and I know Gil Gerard himself was angry about that.
That's interesting. Go on.
Yeah, he kept fighting with the writers in the first season because apparently there was a lot of they wanted to make him James Bond in space, and he wanted to make him a human being with heart. James Bond at the time, the Roger Moore James Bond was very cold, very funny. but not a very didn't have a lot of heart like I really like the new version of James Bond, Daniel Craig's.
Oh sure.
You could in Casino Royale when he loses his girlfriend, you feel
Vesper.
Yeah, you feel that, and
oh yeah,
I think that's what Gil wanted. He wanted feelings. He wanted stories with heart, and unfortunately, a lot of the conflicts led to those writers leaving. And unfortunately, the good parts of what those writers were doing left also, and then we got to season 2 of the show.
And then season 2 of Buck really became more of like a Star Trek almost. Like you said, the Searcher. They had Wilfred Hyde White, a wonderful actor, but really just there to kind of be British and old. Yeah, very lame comic relief, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've seen some of the other things that he's been in, and he's such a brilliant actor, and it's such a shame that he was so underused in that Buck Rogers.
You bet.
So I have some great things planned with that character.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. And, of course, Tweaky. You get to play with Tweaky. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, a lot of people make fun of Tweaky, but, make fun of his voice, especially with the beady beady. But when they took away that for a little while in the second season, the character sucked.
You bet. 100%. I completely agree, man. That's hilarious. That's very fun. Dr. Theopolis, the medallion, almost like Flavor Flav's alarm clock that tweaking war, and yeah, he was a fun kind of interesting character.
Yeah, I read something somewhere, some joke. I wish I knew what the source was, but it said, you're watching bad 70s sci-fi when R2-D2 is wearing C-3PO around his neck.
That's fair. I can appreciate that. But too funny, man.
Yeah, but Dr. Hewer and Dr. Theopolis and Princess Ardala are not in season 2 of the show. Basically, stuff is going to be brewing back at Earth involving those characters, which causes the Searcher to return, and you find out why the Searcher had to leave in the first place. And there's a lot more reasons why Buck was on that than just because they decided to go look for other races for other survivors from Earth's destruction. Basically, you're going to find a lot of stuff.
That's cool. I see a kinship too with John Crichton from Farscape. And yeah. the way Gil played Buck Rogers, yeah.
Well, there's that Farscape. I love Farscape, and I actually wrote an article, which I think I might put up on my blog. I wrote it a few years ago, talking about all the comparisons between Farscape and the original Buck Rogers. I mean, the fact that his name is Crichton, and then there's a robot Crichton on the season 2 of Buck Rogers.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of he says a lot of Earth phrases just like Buck did, and people go, "What?" and he says, "Never mind." There's a lot of that stuff. There's a lot of stuff comparisons between the two shows. So
that's cool.
I think that
Hawk is. Go on. No, I'm sorry.
No. I think there's a lot of good stuff. Farscape is almost a way of thinking of doing Buck Rogers in the 25th century in a cool way. So fans of Farscape might enjoy what we're planning to do with these novels as well. And you're going to talk about Hawk.
Yeah, I wanted to mention Hawk because I really did think that Hawk was, and again, this is my perception as a 12-year-old kid at the time, but I thought Hawk was a pretty cool character from season 2. One of the good things about season 2.
Just like on Space 1999, the second season is almost totally crap, except for the fact that they brought us Maya. The second season of Buck Rogers brought us Hawk, and I totally agree with you. So Hawk is, I have a lot planned with him. A lot of cool stuff. He's going to kick a lot of ass, and
that's half Mr. Spock, half Mr. Worf, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. And you're gonna find out a lot of stuff. He joined the Searcher mission in the pilot for the second season in order to find out what happened to his race. Well, we're going to.
Yes,
we're going to.
Oh, excellent. Oh, that's fantastic. No, again, man, I really think. You're making chicken salad out of chicken shit with some of the stuff that you're working on, man. And honestly, the evidence is there for people who want to read Conspiracy of the Planet of the Apes, Space 1999, Aftershock and Awe, and then the classic Space 1999 going on now in Comixology, soon to be traded by July and San Diego Con.
Yep.
From Drew Gaska and Archaea. So. Congratulations, man. Honestly, I think this is great. I don't want to miss a moment to talk about any of your own original fiction that you're writing. So I don't know if you have any, novels you want to point people to or.
Yes, my first graphic novel, it came out around the same time as Conspiracy and sort of got lost because everyone was focusing on Conspiracy. It's called Critical Millennium, The Dark Frontier. It's available on Amazon. It's available from Archaea at your local comic shop. Basically, it's 2,000 years in the future, and we've basically tapped out the resources of Earth. Scientists get together and figure out that Earth has about 200 years of sustaining human life left to it. But government is just saying, basically, oh no, recycling's working, don't worry about it. So they basically find this 17-year-old kid who's just inherited more money than God, and get him to fund a faster-than-light space program to get us out into the stars so humanity can survive. It's basically the plot of it. Humanity took a serious hit. North America and Europe are pretty much bombed off the map. It's predominantly Indian and Chinese are the dominant race. Whites live in ghettos and are called ghosts and blamed for the destruction of what happened. So it's a dystopia future, pretty much.
Sounds cool, man.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, I'll try and grab that. We can talk about that the next time we chat as well.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Beyond San Diego, what kind of convention plans do you have this year?
Well, actually, this weekend we're going to be at Super Show, which is in Reading, Pennsylvania. Reading, Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Reading, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Fantastic. The Comic Geek Speak Guys convention. Very nice.
Yes. And then after that, April 26th is C2E2. We're going to have our own booth there, Chandra Free and I, for Blam Ventures. It's booth G17. We're also going to be showing up at the Archaea booth there, but at our personal booth at C2E2. We are going to have an exclusive Space 1999 comic. Basically, we took, at all our convention appearances this year, we're going to have an exclusive book. Starting at Super Show, we're taking stories from the classics books that we're going to be... The classic books are going to be printed in color at San Diego when they're finally released all together. However, we're taking stories that have a similar theme and are printing them in a black and white pulp edition. For convention exclusives. So the volume 1 is called Sleight of Hand, State of Mind, and that's going to be available only at Super Show. Leftovers, we're limiting these to 99 copies. Leftovers are going to be available through my Blam Archaea Space 1999 graphic novel discussion group on Facebook. So if you're a member of that, we will be offering them to you there. The first book, the one Super Show book, is 64 pages. And is $14.99. Again, it's limited to 99 copies. The one that's going to be at C2E2 is called Ancient Aliens, New Worlds, and that book is 84 pages, I believe.
Wow!
And it's black and white, and again, it's $14.99, and it's limited to 99 copies, and only available at C2E2. And again, if there's any leftovers through our discussion group on Facebook, there will be a third book and a fourth book, which are likely going to be at Dragon Con and at Comic Palooza. Is that what it's called? Kamikaze. Which will be September and November. But we'll have more details on those later. But like I said, these are issues of the classic series that we've been releasing on Comicology that are released in black and white. The covers are old images from Space 1999 that have been distressed to look like they're kind of old, even older than they are, with crease marks and whatnot on them. It's designed to look like a pulp book from the 40s, pretty much.
Very funny. Yeah. That's great. We're
going into this retro pulp thing. We started a new line of black and white stuff called Blam Noir. Pretty much when the new Apes book comes out, the 6 months leading up to its actual hardcover release, we'll have black and white, just chapter books, pretty much. With one of the Apes paintings will become the cover for that book. It will be a couple of chapters and then say to be continued. They will be released as six books that altogether, these 6 softcover pulpy books will have the whole hardcover book in it, but they will not have all the art that's in the hardcover, if that makes sense.
Sure. No, very cool. That sounds really interesting. Will you release other things that are not, serialized versions of your Ultimate, collections and stuff? Will you release original stories under Blam Noir at all?
If this is doing well, then yes. I actually have an original novel that I don't know. I mean, the plan is to make it as a hardcover with full cover paintings and all that as well. It's a shark horror novel called Frenzy.
Okay.
The plan is to release that as the pulps as well. It's set in the 1970s.
Hilarious. Very good.
Sort of an unofficial prequel to something that was very famous at the time. Yeah, let's just leave it at that.
Fair enough. I'm not even going to say it. I think everyone can follow the roadmap and know what you're talking about. Very good.
Yes.
That's great, man. Hilarious.
Yeah. So we're trying to get into this retro pulp thing to basically as our exclusives through our website, through our conventions, while the main releases are going to be released by companies such as Archaea or Image out there as hardcovers, in the general audience. So a little something for everyone, pretty much.
That sounds great. Seriously, man, a real pleasure talking to you, and I really do enjoy the work, or I wouldn't be talking to you. So keep up the fine work, and I certainly hope that more of my listeners become more of your readers, so that we can continue these excellent stories that you've got planned for the franchises that you're playing with, and also your own original work. So thank you, Drew Gaska.
Yeah, well, thank you, and John, I just want to tell you, I've been interviewed many times, and it's great to be interviewed by somebody who is actually familiar with the work. instead of asking me the generic questions. So thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Andrew Gaska, I'm telling you, check out these books. Go to Amazon, and you will find books like Death of the Planet of the Apes and Conspiracy on the Planet of the Apes. Really interesting stuff. Totally worth your attention. Buck Rogers, he did a couple books, but right now I'm only seeing the first volume available. Very interesting. And then, of course, the Space 1999 stuff as well, Aftershock and the like. Really, really cool stuff from Andrew Gaska. Hope you enjoyed today's Word Balloon. All brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners that continue to back me via Patreon. If you want to subscribe to Word Balloon, wordballoon.com's at the front page there, the Patreon ad there, and then also you go directly to my Patreon webpage, patreon.com/wordballoon. Thank you greatly, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon also brought to you by Aftershock Comics. As I said, they're having a great month right now. In fact, I should point out that Phil Hester, who did the excellent Stronghold with Ryan Kelly, is going to be on next week on Word Balloon, talking about the Stronghold collection that came out right at the end of the month. It is a great story, man. 5 issues, the opening arc, that absolutely is a complete story, and you'll find it interesting. An interesting alien invasion story, a love story mixed in there as well, with great sci-fi elements, and it's a fantastic action and adventure story that is unconventional in the Aftershock way. I can't recommend it enough. Along with Dark Red, the trade paperback of collecting the first 5 issues of Tim Seeley and Corin Howell's great series. And then there are things like Cullen Bunn and Juan Doe picking up things in Arc 2 of Dark Arc After the Flood. So issue 2 of that is coming out this month. Animosity, a big giant collection of Volume 2, Year 2 of Animosity, from Marguerite Bennett and Raphael De La Torre. I got to get Marguerite on the show, man. I'm telling you, not only about Aftershock, but all of her other work that she does in general. Great creator. Baby Teeth, we've got Volume 3 out from Donny Cates and Gary Brown. There's also a Rough Riders complete series hardcover from Adam Glass and Pat Olive, and this collects the Rough Riders original 7-series issue, Riders on the Storm, the 6-issue continuation, and then Rough Riders 3, Ride or Die, a great 4-issue series. All that collected in one great steampunk collection. It is really funny, interesting stuff, among other great books that Aftershock has out for the month of November. Don't take my word for it. Go to their website. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages of art, and also the diamond codes on how to order these books through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Thanks again for listening to Word Balloon. Thank you very much. It's been a great start of November. We continue. Greg Rucka is going to be dropping within a couple hours a new conversation about Stumptown and everything he's doing with Lois Lane, and also what's going on with Lazarus and what's going on with Black Magic. It's great to check in with Greg and have a nice, fun conversation. That's the companion episode to this episode with Andrew Gaska. I hope you'll check it out. Until next time, thanks for listening. Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2019.